So in this video, I'm going to review the looping quiz, and I really want to demonstrate how I would go about solving these problems. I highly recommend and cannot encourage enough that you actually use like a pen and some scratch paper when you try to work through these kinds of problems and when you try to trace and debug your own code. Because this is a video, I'm going to be annotating over here in this white space what I would recommend that you do on a piece of paper. So you're always allowed paper on quizzes, exams, everything. Just scratch paper to work these problems on. You'll find that these problems are not hard per se, because all you're doing is subtracting, adding, setting variables equal to one another. So there's nothing about like adding one to a variable that's hard. The hard part, of course, is understanding the pattern of looping. And really, once you do that, the hard part is just being really careful. Computers don't make mistakes like we do as humans. Humans are very error prone. So what I'm going to do is demonstrate how to be cautious and do this the best possible way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a space up here where I want to store the most current value. So the current values for all of the different variables that we have. So I'm going to start with J has some value, and then I has some value, X has some value, and Y. So these are different spaces in memory that are going to store a value. Now, as I go through my flow of control right here, J doesn't have any value, so I'm going to leave this blank. I has the value of 15, X has the value of 0, and Y has the value of 0. So this is what I recommend you do on a piece of paper. Then when you start actually iterating through your loops here, you want to keep track of all of your values. You can also kind of annotate, and I'll try to do that alongside here, what the current values are when you're looking at your if statements. So when I get to this line of code, I've got while I is less than 8, and while I is greater than or equal to 8, and I is less than or equal to 15. So I have an expression here. Ignore my ugly ampersands. I currently has the value of 15, so while 15 is greater than or equal to 8, and 15 is less than or equal to 15. So 15 greater than or equal to 8, that's true, right? And 15 less than or equal to 15, it is equal, so true. True and true gives me a true, so I do get to go inside this while loop. If I is less than or equal to 12, so again, we're looking at the value 15. If 15 is less than or equal to 12, that is false, so I'm going to skip this. If 15 is equal to 5, also false, skip this. I'm going to decrement I. So I now has the value 14. Awesome. So now I come back up, and again, I'm running the same conditions here, but I'm trying to see if 14 is greater than or equal to 8, and 14 is less than or equal to 15. Now, some programmers, or just humans in general, get lazy and want to skip ahead, but that's where the errors are, right? So I'm going to actually do this one at a time. 14 is greater than or equal to 8, that's true. 14 is also less than or equal to 15, that's true. Again, we have two trues, so a true, we get inside this loop. 14 is not less than or equal to 12, so we skip this. 14 is not 5, skip this. So we're going to decrement I again. Same thing for 13. 13 is both bigger than 8 and less than 15, so true and true gives me a true. I come back inside the loop. 13 less than or equal to 12, no. Continue on. 13 is 5, no. Continue on. So I'm going to decrement to 12. Now I come back up. 12, let me make sure I'm keeping up with this here. 12 is both larger than 8 and less than 15, true and true is true. So I come back inside, and now if I am really careful here, 12 less than or equal to 12, yes, this is true. So now I'm going to hit this statement I minus equals 3. So minus equals is just like saying I equals I minus 3. So we're going to decrement this to 9. This is one part where I see people mess up. They continue back up to the while statement now, but I don't see a word continue or break or anything like that. So I need to continue on, right? I have to check this if statement. They are separate, distinct if statements. So now I'm asking if 9 is equal to 15, or sorry, equal to 5, which it's not. So I come down here and decrement I again to 8, right? Let's come back up. Now I'm asking if 8 is greater than or equal to 8. Yeah, it's equal. If 8 is less than or equal to 15, yes. So again, I have true and true, which gives me a true, and I get inside this while loop. Now I'm asking if 8, see this current value, 8 is less than or equal to 12, which is true. So I'm going to again decrement I by 3. So subtract 3. Again, I have to observe this if statement also, right? The next thing I hit is this line of code. And now if 5, see how this current value is 5, is equal to 5, which it is, then I need to set x to 5. So x had the value of 0 just from up here, right, in line 9, and now has the value of 5. And then I still hit this line of code, I decrement to 4. So if I come back up one last time, if 4 is greater than or equal to 8, which is not true, right? 4 is not bigger than 8, then I have a false and I can actually short circuit here. I don't need to go look at this side because if I have a false in the equation, then I still have a false. Good. So that means that I am outside of the loop and I go to print these values. And if you've been really careful, then you can just grab the most current values. If I print out I, it was 4, right? And if I print out X, it had the value of 5. So again, just be really, really careful with keeping up with these values. Another way to kind of check your work, especially for printing a variable like I, which is used in the controlling expression up here, is you know that it has to be a value that made this expression false. Otherwise, we would still be caught inside this loop, right? So I has to have a value that makes this expression false, and in this case, it is 4. Okay, moving on from here, I'm continuing. I know this is starting to get a little bit messy, but I'm continuing with this because this is in the same program. So these are still my current values, right? So I'm going to leave this as is. I am going to get my eraser tool and just erase this stuff up here just to make it a little bit cleaner. But I'm going to leave all of my current values over here. Okay. So let me get my pen tool back. There we go. And now I'm going to do the same thing. So again, tracing through really carefully, you can see at first glance this is a nested loop. So we're going to need to be even more careful. Down here, I've just commented in the updating expression, which we can see right here, just to remind you, because I do this in my own code, to remind you that with a for loop, the update happens right here, right at the end of the loop. So I just wanted to keep that in mind here. It's kind of a little hint to self. So as I go through this, j is equal to 0. Let me fill in the value. And so this is the first thing I hit, right? I do look at this expression, so I'm looking at if 0 is less than 2, if that's true. So I don't update quite yet. Remember, this happens down here, so I'm going to get into this loop. I'm going to set I equal to 0. So I'm going to just restart I down here at 0 just to have it a little bit cleaner. I starts at 0. While I is less than 2, 0 is less than 2, right? Which is true. So I'm going to increment y by 1. Yes. Increment I by 1. Yes. And come back up. Now I'm still inside this inner loop, right? And so this is now going to say while I is less than 2, I has the current value of 1. So while 1 is less than 2, that's true. Increment y. Increment I. Come through again. While 2 is less than 2, that's false, right? 2 is not less than 2. Then I'm going to come right here which is where I actually perform my update. So I get outside of this loop, perform my update. This condition happens right here. This update expression happens right here. So J is now going to have the value of 1. Okay, now I come back to my controlling expression, and I have if 1, because J has the value 1, is less than 2, which is true, I get back inside this loop. Notice the first thing I hit is that I is reset to 0, right? While 0 is less than 2, we're going to increment y by 1. Y was never reset, right? It has the value 2, so we're going to increment it by 1. You can see I almost made a mistake there, so just be really careful because we all can make mistakes when we're doing this many times. Y increments by 1, and I increments by 1. And then I have the expression while 1 is less than 2, which is true, so y increments by 1 again. I increments by 1 again. And then up here, if 2 is less than 2, right, because this is an I, if 2 is less than 2, that's false, so I skip down here, update J by 1. Then I come back up, and now I have the expression, if 2 is less than 2, J has the current value 2, that's false, so now I skip down here. Now all I have to do is print out these most current values. If I was very careful, then I should have the right answers. So I has the current value of 2, right? J has the current value of 2, right? And then Y has the current value of 4. Now again, I and J were both used in controlling expressions. Let me just erase this here so we can see it a bit better, right? I and J were both used in controlling expressions. So to double check my work, they do have to be something that would make these false, right? J less than 2, well, 2 less than 2 would make this false, so J being 2 makes sense. I less than 2 would make this false, so I being 2 would make sense here. And then Y has the value of 4. Now, if you have time, I always recommend kind of repeating this. If this is a quiz where this is the only thing that you have to do, or if you have extra time on your exam, go back, repeat this, just kind of think it through, make sure that you feel okay with it, and be super careful. Let's go ahead and run this just to show you guys that this was correct. So I'll keep this up here. So we had 4, 5, 2, 2, 4. And if I go ahead and run it, it's not going to let me keep it up there while I run it. You can see 4, 5, 2, 2, 4. So hopefully that has helped kind of alleviate any concerns that you have about this. Again, I know it seems tedious to kind of go through this over and over again, especially when looping, right? You feel like you're repeating something multiple times because you are. But if you're super, super careful, super detail-oriented, actually using that pen and paper to keep track of those variables, then it's not hard at the end of the day, but you do have to pay very, very close attention to what you're doing, and that itself can be hard. So pen and paper from here on. This works on more than just quizzes, right? If you are coding something, you're not getting the values that you're expected, or that you're expecting to get, then do the same thing. Take to pen and paper, trace through whatever it is you're doing and see where you expect some output or expect some result and what is actually happening. All right, until next time.